Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
You are listening to the Brilliance Business Show, conversations with leading experts in business. I am your host, Mark Stephen Pooler, and today we have a wonderful guest, Chip Walker, Head of Strategy at StrawberryFrog. Our topic today is Activate Your Higher Purpose. Chip, welcome to the Brilliance Business Show.
Thanks so much, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm really looking forward to a conversation with you today, Chip. Before I get started, I just need to make a legal disclaimer that Chip is not offering legal advice or legal assistance. So let's get started with the show. Chip, can you share with our listeners a little bit about yourself and your business?
Sure. I live in New York City, and I've worked for several years at a sort of creative marketing and branding agency called StrawberryFrog here in Manhattan in New York City. So I sort of head the strategy function of the agency, which helps advise clients on their brand strategy, and sort of how to go to market in a way that will help them succeed. And in recent years, our business has focused a lot on purpose, higher purpose, and sort of how you activate that in the marketplace, whether you're a brand or a business or a nonprofit organization, or sometimes if you're just a leader who wants to be more purposeful in how you behave.
I hear you. Branding is so important, Chip, and having the right strategy is what really makes things work so that you can move forwards and create success. Who are your customers, Chip? What clients do you serve?
Yeah, we tend to work by and large with honestly larger companies, both here in the United States and abroad. Some of our major clients include Walmart, the giant retailer. We also do business with a large bank called Truist, Truist. Used to be called SunTrust, but they just merged with another bank. So it's a very large bank here in the United States. We work with a couple of health systems, very large ones, one called Northwell Health here in New York State. It's the largest employer in New York State. But a wide range of other clients too, including a large multinational out of India called Mahindra that you may have heard of. They're a major competitor to Tata. So those are some of our sort of ongoing clients. And then we do project work for just a wide array of clients. Like currently we're doing a branding project for a fintech brand called Afterpay. You may have heard of it. They are a payments company out of Australia that is a very interesting company. So that's sort of a taste of who some of our clients are.
Well, that's a great CV, Chip, and I think everyone has heard of Walmart as well. Now, Chip, I would like to ask you, can you share the ha-ha moment that led to the launch of your business?
The aha moment. Yeah. Well, StrawberryFrog was started in way back over 20 years ago, at the very turn of the 21st century. And I think the aha moment was that, there were a lot of large conglomerate agencies out there, creative agencies, advertising agencies, branding agencies. Many of them were owned by holding companies. And they, did business with clients both large and small, but they had all merged to the point that there were really just a small number of them, just a handful of these very mega, gigantic agencies. A lot of clients just really weren't that satisfied with it. I think they felt like they were treated impersonally. The quality of their work maybe wasn't what the clients would want. And when we started StrawberryFrog, it was this notion of the Dinosaur Agency, which is a large holding company, and giving clients an alternative to that. And that's kind of where we came up with Dinosaur, which is slow, old, and lumbering, versus Frog, which is fast, can make leaps anywhere, agile, and hopefully more effective. So that was kind of the lore of Dinosaur versus Frog that sort of led to the start of StrawberryFrog. And I think we also felt that we wanted a different philosophy, a different approach to how you connect with people through creative work. And it was really had to do with this idea of movements. And what we did was take the notions behind successful societal movements, movements like the equal rights movement, the women's movement, the principles that made those successful, and use them as a way for brands to connect with people. And that's kind of been our philosophy ever since. We call it movement marketing. And it's kind of what led to a book that my business partner, Scott, who was the company's founder, the book that he and I recently wrote called Activate Brand Purpose. And it's all about using movements to transform your company.
20 years seems such a long time, Chip, but time really does fly. And I love the name as well, StrawberryFrog. I think that's really catching. And also, you mentioned customer service. It's so important we look after our clients and treat them well. And unfortunately, there's still a lot of companies out there that don't get this correct. Where can our listeners get a copy of your book, Chip?
The easiest place is probably on Amazon.com, both the US, the UK site, either one. The book is called Activate Brand Purpose. And as I said, it's available in both hardback and paperback and Kindle format, and soon to be, not quite yet, but very soon to be in audio format.
Audible is a great thing. I love Audible. What really? I know,
me too.
Yes, it's so much easier. I'm not a big reader, so I much prefer getting Audible and just listening, and I take in the information better. Chip, what really motivates you to jump out of bed every morning?
Oh, that's a very good question. And a lot of people think that this answer will sound counterintuitive or strange, but I really hope that what I do in my work, at least, can help make the world at least a little bit of a better place. We try to apply, as I said, the principles of movements and the thinking about higher purpose. How does a company or a brand serve not just profit, but also society? We try to build that into everything we do with clients. And luckily, there seems to be a really big audience for that right now, so that business can kind of be a force for good as well as a force for making money. And so I find that highly motivating. It makes my work feel like I'm doing something meaningful and not just adding more clutter out there to the world of marketing and advertising.
Great reasons to get out of bed when you're coming from a place of service. And what sets your business apart, and what unique need are you filling for your clients?
Yeah, I think it's our philosophy and our approach. I mean, our higher purpose at StrawberryFrog is called Creativity for Good, which is sort of what I just got through summing up about trying to help businesses serve all stakeholders and society, not just shareholders. So it's our philosophy, but the unique way that we do it is, as I said, we call it movement marketing, and it uses the principles behind successful social movements to help organizations and leaders connect with their constituencies. And the approach, specifically, we call it movement thinking. And it sort of has a set of principles that we use, sort of like brand positioning, but it's a little bit different approach to it that helps leaders, as I said, use principles of social movements to grow their business.
And why do you feel your service is especially important in today's modern world, Chip?
Yeah. Well, interest in things like movements and purpose have exploded in recent years. And I'm sure you hear more and more about it. And during the pandemic, it's only gotten more extreme, that the interest that people have. Purpose seems to be the number one topic on the minds of many leaders.
Yes.
And one of the reasons we decided to write our book in the past year was that we found that more and more companies and prospects were coming to us asking us about purpose, either to help them understand and develop their higher purpose as an organization, or more often it was that they'd had consultants in to help them do that. But the company, had a purpose, but just didn't really know what to do with it. And purpose is by its nature kind of lofty. In order to be inspiring, it often uses lofty language, but it leaves people not sure how to act on it. So it ends up in the About section on your website, or it ends up on a coffee mug or a T-shirt or a plaque on the wall. But that's really it. In today's world, not only is discovering and understanding your purpose really important to a lot of people, but as I said, we found a lot of leaders are really anxious for how to act on it. And that's what we do with our sort of movement marketing approach. And it's the reason that we wrote our book, Activate Brand Purpose.
Yes, and purpose is so important, Chip. And when you're following your purpose and you know what your purpose is, it's so much more fulfilling and rewarding, and a great reason to get up every morning as well, because some people are not following their true purpose. They don't know their purpose. But like you mentioned, the pandemic has really taken people back to what's my purpose? What's my business purpose and movement as well, which you mentioned, which has really become really more popular as well. Could you just share a few more detail on the kind of services and products you offer?
Sure. We're a creative agency, so we tend to do sort of brand and marketing thinking work of all kinds, positioning, brand strategy work, but usually it's all in service of some sort of either internal company facing creative work or external facing creative work. Maybe it would help if I gave you an example to illustrate. So we had a client come to us several years ago, right after the great recession as it was ending. It was a bank, I mentioned it earlier, called SunTrust Bank, very large bank in the United States. And they had developed a purpose called lighting the way to financial well-being. That was their higher purpose that they developed. And they were really happy with it. But as I mentioned, they, like many other companies, were trying to figure out, well, what do we do with this? And that's why they came to us. Help us figure out how this turns into communications, actions, behaviors, experiences, both inside of our company for our employees and outside. So what we did was put that purpose through the lens of, as I described earlier, we call it movement thinking. So, successful movements all start with some sort of a dissatisfaction. There's some right out in the world, some wrong out in the world that needs to be made right.
Yes.
That the starter of the movement thinks is important. And if you think about Black Lives Matter or Me Too or any of the more recent movements, we all know what the dissatisfaction is with those. And they also, movements have a change that they all want to see in the world for it to be a better place, which leads to kind of an enemy that they want to attack and a stand that they take. So reframing that notion of lighting the way to financial well-being was the first thing that we took on. And we went out into culture and looked around and saw that In the United States, a lot of people had not really ever recovered from the Great Recession, even though it was 2 or 3 years later. Even people of means were struggling, and they were very worried financially and felt that they were sort of on the edge of being able to survive even, which seemed wrong, I think, to everyone at the bank, that didn't need to be. So the enemy that we decided that we were going to go against was basically financial stress, financial anxiety and stress that so many were feeling in the United States years after the recession. And the stand that we decided to take for our movement was for financial confidence. And all of a sudden, when you put it in those terms, like we're going to lead a movement that's against financial anxiety and to create and build in the United States financial confidence in people. All of a sudden, that started to give employees a sense of why it is they get up and go to work every day. What important job in the world do they do? And it started to indicate, wow, there are a lot of things that the bank can do to help build financial confidence. In particular, a lot around financial education. How do you budget? All of those kinds of things. And the movement that we decided to create for SunTrust was called On Up, which is short for Onwards and Upwards. And the movement to this day has, I think, over 6 million people who participate in it. It's been a huge success both inside and outside the bank. But that's sort of an example of how we use our I don't know if I would call it a product or service, but the way that we apply what we do, which is movement thinking, to a business problem.
Yes. And what I really taken from what you said is a lot of movements come from bad situations or negative circumstances. And that goes for a lot of things in even personal business. It's normally the negative situations that drive us and push us forwards as well. Now, I know you have all sorts of client success stories. You have just shared a great one there, so you can use that one if you would like, Chip, but I would like you to just pick out one that really stands out to you.
Sure. Maybe I'll talk about an early one for StrawberryFrog, but it's one that's still around today. And that was the launch and marketing of the smart car. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but the smart car is a tiny little car.
Yes.
You've heard of it before.
Yes,
so a tiny car that tends to be driven in very, very urban environments. This was at the very launch of the car, and the makers were trying to figure out how do you market such a tiny car. And I think the obvious thing was that, it's smaller, it's cheaper, it uses less gas. So maybe that's the way you market it. But I think they had bigger ideas than that. So they came to us, and we put it through the lens of movement thinking, and went out to look at what is the big dissatisfaction in the world that people have that we can help rally them around that have to do with this vehicle. And what came to us and seemed pretty obvious was the notion that a lot of urbanites in particular are dissatisfaction with the kind of amount of overconsumption and waste in their cities and in the world, specifically big, unnecessary cars and gigantic SUVs. I think you probably have it less in the EU than we do, but here, lots of gigantic cars, huge SUVs that are just not necessary in the city. They take up a lot of space. They pollute. They just make the environment a lot worse. So the change that we decided we wanted to see was that could smart car help lead a movement to kind of restore the urban landscape to a more pristine state, basically by overcoming an enemy of like stupidly overconsuming and really taking a stand for more conscious consuming via the kind of automobile that you buy. So the movement that we led, we called it Against Dumb, which represented over-consuming. And the stand was for what we called being smart or more conscious consuming. And you may have seen the advertising, the creative work out there over the years. It's been around for a few years. Or if you Google smart car, you will certainly see about the Against Dumb movement. But that's just another example of how we use movement thinking to reframe a brand away from sort of the functional, like it uses less gas, towards something I think that maybe matters a lot more to the urban consumers that we were talking to.
Yes, that makes sense. I have seen a lot of their ad campaigns, and they park into the smallest spaces. One of their shape cars does. They just go into a tiny little parking space. But so many people are really concerned about the environment and being more green. So that really does make sense to focus the car around those benefits as well. Chip, how do clients typically hear about you, and are there certain life moments that usually lead to them seeking you out?
Sorry about that.
Don't worry.
So how do clients typically hear about us? Through programs like this. So my business partner, Scott Goodson, and I do a lot of podcasts and that kind of thing. But I think probably a lot through word of mouth. The circles of leadership in the corporate world, many of them know each other. So we get a lot of recommendations from our existing clients and people who know us. But both Scott and I are frequently quoted in the press. And as I said, we just wrote a book that seems to be selling pretty well. So I think that's another vehicle that will allow people to get to know us a little bit.
Chip, I really enjoyed having a conversation with you today. Is there anything we did not cover that you would like to share?
No, you've been very thorough. I would just say if anybody who's listening would like to know a little bit more about movement thinking and how we activate brand purpose, or just has any questions, feel free to reach out to me. It's easy to reach me. My email is just chip@StrawberryFrog.com. I would love to hear from you.
Just share once more how our listeners can get a hold of you.
I'm sorry, would you say that again?
Just share once more how our listeners can get a hold of you, your website or your email.
Yes. So again, my email address, it's chip@strawberryfrog.com. They want to know more about our company or want to connect with us through our website. It's just very easy, www.strawberryfrog.com. And if you want to know more about our book, it's activatebrandpurpose.com. And you can learn more about our book or even purchase it through that site if you would like.
Chip, thank you so much for coming on to the Brilliance Business Show. I've really enjoyed having a conversation with you.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here.
It's been my pleasure. You have been listening to the Brilliance Business Show, conversations with leading experts in business.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.